Hey Super Tubers, don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and spread the word about the channel, and find me on these social media platforms. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice is in the books. It's been in theaters now for a little while. And what's next for the DC expanded universe? Well, we know for a fact that we've got Suicide Squad coming later this year, but the next movie I think they're going to really promote heavily is going to be the Justice League. And I want to talk about the Justice League, our aspirations, our predictions, our hopes, and probably not going to come true, but still, we're going to talk about it here. And joining me, I want to bring on a lifelong fan of DC Comics, one who really understands and loves these characters, and I think it'll be a good conversation to talk to him about the Justice League live-action movie, the first live-action Justice League movie ever. Please welcome Mike from LaughingStock Media.
Hey guys, it's Mike here from LaughingStock Media, even though Big D just told you that.
How did I know? How did I know? Well, actually, I did want to say that I was semi-wrong about that. There is a Justice League of America 97 pilot movie. I've never seen it before, but this is the first, like, Justice League, like, live action, you know.
It's the first real one.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's the first real one. So, Batman v Superman, we're going to go into some spoilers here for Batman v Superman. So, if you don't want to be spoiled, you know, if you haven't seen the movie or whatever, then definitely, you know, you now know what we're going to talk about. If you don't care, that's fine. So Superman dies.
What?
Ow, you blew out my eardrums there. Superman dies at the end of the movie, killed by Doomsday, which is what happens in the comic, but not quite as good there.
You actually care when it happened in the comic.
Well, yeah, because it was built up so well. I mean, that was one of the best built-up things they've ever done. I mean, it's fantastic stuff. And, of course, he's going to come back. We know he comes back in the next film. Then, of course, the question is, you know, how's he going to come back? And that's where we left off. Now, of course, Batman v Superman was criticized as being very, very dark and, you know, very, very broody. And like I said in my Geek the Movie talk about that movie, they can't really be too lighthearted with Justice League because, you know, Marvel's kind of lighthearted. And they're kind of fucked either way. But let me ask you, Mike. So first and foremost, do you think that the Justice League film, and just for everybody who, just a little more information, Chris Terrio's writing the movie. There's going to be two parts, Justice League Part 1 and Part 2. It's going to be one big 6-hour movie cut into two parts, which I know you like. My question to you is, should Justice League be less dark and more fun, in your opinion?
I mean, like, the thing is that DC in the comics, I mean, maybe not the newer stuff because they love to try and do their dark, edgy hipster crap, but DC in the comics, you know, for most of the time, the Justice League of America, they have their harsh and dark moments, certainly, definitely, especially stuff with Darkseid, which they hinted at Batman versus Superman. But they have their lighthearted moments. They have their moments of, you know, levity and moments where characters are just having fun together, especially the Justice League cartoon. The Justice League cartoon is a great example to look at because they have so many episodes and so many moments where the characters are just having fun, like Batman and Wonder Woman go out on like dates and stuff. You know, there's like fun little character moments, and Batman versus Superman is kind of a movie where they had very few of that. And Batman, you know, in the Justice League movie coming out, they have to have more. Like, I don't think that they need to be all wacky and comedy, because the thing is, even though people love that in Marvel, I hate that Marvel tries to turn everything into a flat-out comedy these days, like comedy action, because Marvel is not supposed to be comedy action. It's an action series, you know, with characters that have comedic moments, like Terminator 2. One of the biggest problems with Terminator 3 is that they tried to make the movie into like a comedy movie, as opposed to having comedy come about naturally through interactions with characters, like in Terminator 2. You know, how he interacted with his environment was comedic.
Yeah, fish out of water story.
Absolutely. So you can't have the whole thing be all comedy like a Guardians of the Galaxy, which I feel like has flaws that people don't want to acknowledge, especially in that, you know, you don't want everything to be a flat out comedy like Ant-Man, which can be fun because there are moments of serious shit that happens, like with Thanos and the Infinity Wars and stuff. Very serious stuff happens. If it's all comedy, it becomes way too much of a tonal mess when you actually switch over to dark stuff, which we kind of saw in Age of Ultron when they were trying to clash between the two. So DC can still be serious and dark, but it needs to lighten up a lot, and it needs to stop being, you know, oh, morose and when you go to see a DC movie, it shouldn't be like going to a funeral. You know, I mean that's what half of Batman versus Superman felt like, going to a funeral,
And
which
at
is
the end, there
ironic
was
considering the
one.
ending. Yeah,
Yeah.
in the
Now,
beginning too.
I did want to ask you something else as well about that.
Yeah,
One thing I don't want to see,
yeah.
trying want to get your thoughts, is I don't want to see the clash between the heroes. I don't want to see that anymore. I don't want to see Batman fight Superman. I don't want to see Aquaman fight Flash. I don't want the first half of this movie to be them not being able to get along and them hammering in our heads, oh, they can't get along, they can't get along. I don't want to, I do not want to
I mean,
make.
that's the only thing with that is that that's typically how they try and start stuff out. Now,
It's
at
played
least,
out to me, though. I think it's
yeah,
played out. I mean, we already saw it in Batman v Superman. We saw it in Avengers 1. We're going to see it again in Civil War. I just
mhm.
feel like with this movie, they should be united together.
I mean, I feel like that's going to be what happens in the first act. But like, I've heard rumors recently that part one of Justice League is going to be like a war with Atlantis and Aquaman, which is a big thing that did happen in the cartoons and the comics. Like Aquaman, like Atlantis basically is like the chief owner of like 70 something percent of the planet, because like they own all the ocean, and Aquaman is the king of all that. So he's basically the king of the earth for the most part. And he hates the people on the surface for polluting his oceans and stuff like that. So I mean, that's probably they probably will go in that direction. So it might be like all the people of the surface, like of the Justice League, uniting against Aquaman, and then they find out, of course, that it'll probably be Black Manta or something along those lines that they'll use to try and make him a member of the Justice League for real. But Aquaman's, and they show him, he's always been kind of like an anti-hero in some ways, kind of like Namor in
They're very similar, yeah.
yeah. I mean, well, Aquaman's basically a ripoff of Namor anyway, but like the fact of the matter is, like, I feel like they're still gonna do that. Now, after every single superhero fought this year, should they do it? Now that's up in the air, but I mean, I still am kind of a person who believes in a case by case. It just needs to stop being so grim dark, like they need to just be like, okay, we're fighting, but let's get that shit out of the way. And let's actually be a team for once.
I mean,
let's be nice and happy.
but the problem is, though, that with a two-part story like this, I feel like part one kind of has to be dark,
Yeah.
and then in part two they get out of it. So I feel like it's going to be kind of a trouble because, okay, I believe that Jesse Eisenberg will return as Lex Luthor, and obviously his acting, and his version didn't quite, hit the mark, I feel, for Lex Luthor. But I do
Yeah.
think that he is probably going to come back and reprise the role. But, I mean, we all kind of know that Darkseid is going to be the lead villain for this film.
I
And
think that, not to interrupt you, but I want to point something out that I think might be happening. And now, we talked about already that Superman dies, all right? So we've already gotten to that spoiler section.
yes, at the end of the last movie. Yes.
Yeah, at the very end, we see like the dust or the rocks lifting off his coffin. All right. Now, a lot of people interpret that as Superman's already coming back to life, but there's another big possibility that something is going to happen, which involves Darkseid and which could explain why Superman was evil in that flashback. And there is a big storyline, especially in the Superman cartoon, where Darkseid basically takes Superman and his body, and he turns him evil, and he tells Superman that Superman is his son, and then he sends him to the Earth to fight against the Earth and be evil.
So you're saying there's a possibility that maybe part one is everybody getting together to fight Superman, in which case Batman's premonition, I suppose, would be true in a way.
I think it's entirely possible. Of course, there was also the thing where Flash comes back in time and speaks to Batman in the first, Batman vs. Superman, and he says Lois is the key, but then he says to him, wait, am I too early? So it's possible that, somehow Lois is could possibly die, and Superman will stay evil even if he, remembers who he is. Like, there's so many different storylines that they're trying to shove into the first movie, for the most part of this, cinematic universe that might play out in the next coming one. But I definitely feel like they're still going to go in a really dark direction.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they will for sure. Now, another thing I wanted to touch on, because one thing I will give Joss Whedon a lot of credit for is that when he did Avengers 1, I felt like he did a fantastic job of giving all the characters equal screen time, which is very challenging when you're dealing with egotistical actors and when you're dealing with main event players coming together for one movie. With Justice League, I feel like now it's even more crucial because we're not going to get the Aquaman movies until 2018, 2020. The Flash and the Cyborg movies aren't even coming for a while.
Green Lantern.
Yeah, I don't even think that he's going to be a part of the Justice League. I do not even believe he's even going to be in it. I don't think so. I think they're going to totally reboot that later on and then put him in a future Justice League movie, but I don't think he's going to be a part of this first one. But we might be, but there's no indication of that. We know it's going to be for sure Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, Cyborg, and Batman, Superman. The thing
is Martian Manhunter? I
think they might bring him in later as well. I mean, he might come in with Darkseid. Darkseid shows up and then he shows up. You never know.
Yeah.
But that goes to my point. I think that the big challenge for Snyder, which, you know, he's not one of my favorite directors, one of the big challenges for him is that he's going to have to give all these characters equal screen time. I think Aquaman, Flash, Cyborg, Wonder Woman, they all have to have their own, even though they're getting their own solo movies, it's not coming till afterwards. So you can't just put them in the back burner. They have to get their own, like, development. They have to get time to shine, which with a 3-hour movie you can do, but it's still challenging.
One thing I will say, like a compliment towards Snyder, although I still wish that they would just replace him, is that at least in The Watchmen, he did this.
Yes,
you know,
he did.
Because there is tons of character development and there is tons of, moments where they spend on Rorschach and they spend on Night Owl and they spend on Dr. Manhattan and, Sally Jupiter and characters like that, even characters from the past and the future, stuff like that. There is tons of development of this team, but I mean, it's not like they're constantly interacting all as one large group. So, I mean, one of the things though, too, is that like, inevitably it's going to be impossible to do like character development for everyone, because even if you watch like Justice League Unlimited, there's there's so many members of the Justice League, there's like hundreds of members, so it's impossible to do like that much character development. Like, I guess at least if you give some, but like at some point it's just like, all right, I don't care about, Green Arrow going to the grocery store or anything like that anymore. Just let's get to the story.
Yeah, I agree. And it's going to be, the thing is that the beautiful thing about this that we'll give them credit for, I'll totally give DC credit for this, is that they're making it 2 movies. And I know that you yourself are a huge fan of long movies. I think that you have to be very careful because, like we talked about, I think Batman v Superman was a little bit too long. I'm still going to watch the unrated cut when it comes out, the R-rated cut, but I think with this film, you have so much time now to develop these characters. There is no excuse except for bad writing and bad directing for them not to give everybody an equal amount of time and to give them those personalities. I mean, we really need to see those personalities shine. The one thing about DC, and I'll let you talk about this here before we get out of here, versus Marvel, is that I think that the Marvel heroes do have more of a humanistic personality, and that was Stan Lee's original plan, anyways, was to make them more humanistic. Whereas the DC heroes are more allegorical. They're more based on the symbolism of, what's good about mankind, which in some cases there's really not a lot of good, Yeah, but they've been accused of being vanilla too.
Oh, absolutely, especially Superman. But I mean, then again, Captain America was for so long, and then we got these amazing adaptations in the comics and then the movies of this character that make us actually care about him. Like, many people nowadays, like when Captain America was first coming out, they're like, oh, I don't want to see a Captain America movie. Now everyone's like, fuck, I got to see the Captain America movie.
Dude,
you know what I mean? Like,
I don't know about you, but Winter Soldier's my favorite one they've done so far.
Oh, I agree. I mean, that's, in my opinion, that's easily their best one, which is probably why Marvel made the Russos, their new, to take over the Avengers Infinity War movies, because they were like, okay, you guys did an amazing job with this. Let's have us do this.
Poor Joss Whedon.
I know. But like, the thing is, like, when it comes to that, DC's characters have always been more iconic. Everyone knows Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, all these characters. Everyone knows who they are immediately the second you associate it. They know their symbols, all that stuff. They have, even though some characters might not necessarily have more history than others, Batman and Superman obviously do, but their characters have always been bigger and more iconic, whereas Marvel's really haven't, to be honest. Like,
so you have Spider-Man and the X-Men.
Spider-Man and the Hulk and X-Men. That's about it. Like, until the movies came out,
Deadpool
their comic characters were not as anywhere near as iconic as DC's. So I feel like so many people have jumped on the Marvel bandwagon in a lot of ways that, they really don't appreciate what DC has done for so long and the risks that they've taken. Like this stuff with Darkseid. I was talking to a friend about this the other day. Darkseid and the New Gods in the Fourth World was such a gigantic risk, and Stan Lee didn't even want to take it because it would involve killing all the other gods that they already had established and creating their own mythology. And Stan Lee was like, "No, I'm not going to let you do that." So, well, because originally they were going to make Darkseid and the New Gods. Kirby was originally going to do it in Marvel.
I see what you're talking about.
And Stan Lee said no. He said that's crazy. So Kirby went over to DC and he made it there. and it ended up
Which is kind of
becoming.
weird because Thanos and those guys are very similar.
Well, Thanos. Well,
and
I mean, Jim Starlin has flat out said he ripped off Darkseid to make
I
Thanos.
know, but it's funny to me that he ended up getting the same shit anyways.
Yeah, I mean,
That makes me laugh.
it is pretty funny, probably because they saw how well it worked. But I mean, like DC has just done so much stuff in the comics and the cartoons, and their cartoons have always been so much better than Marvel.
Yeah,
So
that's one thing I will say. If you're disappointed with the Batman v Superman movie, you've got to check out the animated ones. I'm actually playing catch up right now with those because they are fantastic.
yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're you'll actually like the DC heroes a hell of a lot more in those if you see them. But continue your point about that.
Well, I was basically just going to say that I feel like people, even though they're so quick to jump on the Marvel bandwagon, they really got to give DC a chance. Like, especially if you check out those animated movies. Like, obviously, a lot of people, watch Dragon Ball Z, who watch our channels. Check out the animated movies. You'll love them. Like all the animated, like, stuff leading up to the Justice League cartoon, too. Like the Batman Superman series, Batman Superman Adventures. They did it perfectly in that. I just wish that they had just brought in Bruce Timm, who did those, to do the movies, because it would have been perfect.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things they could have done, and that's the thing. The live action movies, very polarizing. A lot of people hate the movies, but I've talked to a lot of people who love those movies. And with Justice League, I just hope that they really, go a different direction. And again, they don't have to go that lighthearted because if you're gonna bring in Darkseid, it's got to be a bad time. Like they got to get their ass kicked in part 1 so that they can come back in part 2. But let us know your thoughts down below. What are your hopes and expectations and your dreams of Justice League? Do you think that they'll actually fix what the problems they've caused? Do you think it'll be a good movie in your opinion? Let us know down below, and check out LaughingStock Media for more stuff like this.
Absolutely. And hasta la vista, baby.
That's right. We'll catch you down the road.